If there's any question remaining about what disruption looks like, this is what disruption looks like. This is an awesome panel. So excited and proud to be with you all here on the stage. Suzanne, let's start with you. You and I were talking just before about how the definition of disruption has really changed and what we think of and understand as disruption has changed. How has that conversation shifted in your company, in your industry, and in your life?
Yeah, I was just making the comment that 5 years ago, disruption has really had a very negative connotation. And today, there's sort of this notion of kind of leaning in, running to the fire. And if you're not, in our world, we kind of think about disrupt or die, right? And disruption is as opposed to evolution. So the more that you are disruptive and can take control of that, then you can lead the pack rather than reacting to others who are making those changes.
Speaking of running into the fire, Boz, you have a new job.
I knew that was coming.
That was a gimme transition. You have always been a risk taker. You've always been an innovator. Describe to us your journey in deciding to make this huge change. You were with one of the most beloved and iconic companies in the world, Apple, working on Apple Music, and you was it just this week or last week?
Oh yeah, I'm on day 2.
Oh, day 2, chief brand officer at Uber, and Uber has some brand issues it's working on. So walk us through.
Well, I mean, that's why I have a job. You know what I'm saying?
But I'd love
to be thankful.
Absolutely. So I'd love for you to walk us through. How did you decide that you wanted to make this jump, and why?
Well, it's funny. I've always said that, so I actually thought it was really funny when you just said, running towards the fire. I think if there was any, tagline for me, it might be that. I always find it interesting that history seems to, be written with these huge, beautiful banners of, oh, you knew exactly what you were doing when, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not true. I don't know that there's any job I've ever taken where someone was like, oh, good one, that's a good idea, Which I don't know if that says something about me or about them. But it has always worked out well, and part of that, I think, is some of what we've been talking about with a disruptive attitude and perspective that I don't fear challenge. I don't think that it is something that is maybe in my DNA, to always be trying to fix and work on and better. And so for me, those things come naturally to me. That's why, even at looking at Uber, I see opportunity and potential. I don't see a fire. So when people say, well, good luck, I'm like, yes, thank you, because I am that. No, but I really do feel like this is a great opportunity, and I'm really excited about it.
But, we're seeing this in politics and other places. Usually men make the mess, and then the women clean it up.
Ooh, girl. Oh. And
I didn't come to play.
Clearly. Well, here's the thing. I think that women have a unique talent of being able to see the forest and the trees at the same time. Mm-hmm. We're able to sort of see the bigger picture and see the vision, but also see the unique things that are happening and be able to fix it, So there's something to be said for being visionary, but also wanting to roll up your sleeves and fix it. And for me, hell, that's come in a number of ways. Being a mom is one of those things. It's like you love the kid and you have all the, future sights of what this person will eventually become, but you got to also change some poopy diapers along the way. You know what I mean? So.
I feel as if we have this very clear picture of what disruptors look like, and also sort of how we socialize risk, because inherent in disruption is the willingness to take really big risks. And maybe this is generational, and maybe the younger people on this panel don't feel this way, but I think that girls are sort of socialized to avoid risk, and boys are socialized and rewarded for taking risks. And young male entrepreneurs who take risks are seen as bold and innovative. Female entrepreneurs who take risks, they risk being seen as reckless. Gwynne, how have you seen that evolve over the years?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone has ever looked at me as being reckless. I think I probably thought I was reckless when I took my job at SpaceX. Here I'm interviewing with Elon to sell rockets that hadn't been built, and And my boss is telling me how these rockets and spaceships are going to one day carry people to Mars. You know, that feels really like you're running into the fire on that one. But you know, if you're taking the safe path, you're definitely not going to grow. You never want to take the safe path. You probably want some backup for risk management somewhere, but yeah, if you're not pushing yourself, you're probably not going to grow as much as you could. And I think this is all about growing and learning and doing things that seem impossible to start, but then become reality.
Was your journey to rocket ships sort of like smooth sailing? You knew from a young age that was going to be your path?
Absolutely not. I started thinking about being an engineer when I was in third grade because my mom was driving. We lived kind of out in the country and we had to drive everywhere. And I was wondering, how, you know, the wheels go this way in a car, but how does a car work? So my mom bought me a book on how a car works. So I was more a car person. Funny, I ended up at SpaceX, not at Tesla. But the one thing I do remember about space, I do remember watching the moon landing. I was a little kid, but I do remember watching that, and it was my dad who like lined up the three girls up in front of the TV set, and we were in our little jammies and watching. So that's kind of the first memory I have of space. But I was not a space person. I was a car person.
Wow. We're going to come back to that. So, Elaine, when you took this job, what did Teen Vogue look like?
So I started at Teen Vogue actually about 5 years ago.
No, sure.
It's a very different place then, and even a year ago, it was a very different place. And I think that's because the world was a different place even just a year ago. And Teen Vogue was in a very different position. We were in a crossroads of sorts because, you know, with social media, you know, being the primary source of, you know, media consumption and you know, digital being what it is, where is there room for a teen magazine today in 2017? And you know, there was a lot of conversation around like, you know, teens don't read magazines, teens don't read anything, they only want to scroll Instagram. And I just knew that there was a place for Teen Vogue. We just hadn't realized our potential yet. And I knew that it just required throwing out the formula and coming at it with a completely fresh perspective and looking at the white space. There was a ton of white space for us. And I knew that because I know this audience. I meet Yara Shahidi regularly for conversations. I talk to Rowan Blanchard. These are like brilliant girls who could school me on a number of things. And I learned so much from them. And I thought this magazine isn't necessarily reflective of their multitudes, right? Like these are girls who they care about lipstick and Bieber, and they want to talk about Black Lives Matter. And they are just, I mean, and also it's not surprising because like so do I, and like so do all of us. So how can we make our platform more representative of that? And also just like make it a more fun place to work. Like I want to work on things that I find fun and interesting. So I think infusing more depth was something that was just obvious and something that we had to do to stay relevant and to keep ourselves interested in our jobs. And then, you know, political coverage became something that became a priority for us throughout the campaign, and then the world just shifted again with the Trump administration, and it just became clear that there was a space for Teen Vogue to deliver political news and a perspective on social and current events that specifically for this audience that was just being underserved and frankly underestimated. Which was reflected in the reaction to Teen Vogue's shift in our editorial direction, because people were sort of like, Teen Vogue? Like, you can be a fashion magazine and talk about politics? Like, how dare you? And I feel like, you know, the implied sentiment there is like incredibly sexist. You know, to think that as a woman you can't be both, or you know that these two things are mutually exclusive is just, to me, it's just silly. I
mean, women's magazines have always covered the big issues, right?
Absolutely.
And so in this case, it's not just gender, but it's also kind of age, right? I mean, this assumption that young people are only interested in, you know, playing video games and they're only interested in Bieber. I mean, I'm super interested in Bieber, speaking for myself. But, you know, I sort of feel like it's been really exciting to see Teen Vogue explode in this way and to see the kind of bemused reaction of the Twitterverse, particularly the elite media Twitterverse, of which I'm a denizen. Respond to the journalism that you're doing. So I want to talk about risk some more, and I'd like for each of you to tell me about a risk you took, and tell me about one that really worked out great and one that didn't work out so great, and what you learned from each of them. You have 30 seconds. Just kidding.
30 words or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so one that worked out well was, this will definitely date me, but it was back in the middle of, if you remember, kind of the whole internet craze, and it was threatening to disrupt a lot of businesses, including consulting, and sort of the notion that, big business is bad business and it's dead. And so I was asked by our CEO at the time to work with a team of 2 other people to help change the way our firm was represented in the market in that space. So big risk because it was, an unknown problem. We didn't have any idea how to solve it. I was very young at the time. I was not a partner in a partnership firm. And so I did it, and, it turned out very well. It was great for the firm. We did some very innovative things that sort of, still linger and have influenced the firm. So that was a great one. In terms of one, it's a little bit personal and happened recently. I run now for Deloitte, our tech sector industry practice, which is like running a P&L and a part of the firm in business, right? And it was interesting because I've known as being kind of a risk taker. I did some things inadvertently last year that I'm still kind of trying to recover from a little bit. One was, I didn't make really big risks, and people expected me to. And I made some smaller risks and didn't explain why. And it got me into this spot where people wanted me to be one way, and yet I was changing enough and kind of being different enough in what is kind of a, regular management role that people were really struggling. And I paid the price, and I've spent a year kind of trying to meet people where they are, and I'm looking forward to next year where I can take big risks again.
So calibrating and communicating is really important.
I always say you can rewrite the rules, but you have to explain why.
Right.
And that's what I missed.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Let me write that down. Well, for me, it's super personal. I took a risk when I was at Pepsi, hitting the stride, I feel like jumping from one moment to another in my career where I was becoming, more noticed. The projects I was working on were becoming bigger, et cetera. And I really wanted to start a family. I wanted to have my daughter, a child at the time. Didn't know she was gonna be a girl, but in any case. And I was advised not to do that. I was advised that I should wait. That I probably wanted to get somewhere, a little further before I started a family. And it was interesting to me because this advice was being given to me by women that I really respected.
It happens so often.
And I ignored it anyway. Had my daughter, who's now 8, and she is singularly, the most important thing in my life. And part of the reason why I am a risk taker, she's part of the reason why I'm sitting here right now. I want to show her that this is all possible, that there isn't a mountain that you really can't climb, if you have the desire to do that. And then, I think for all of those reasons that we all, achieve, it's like, those ceilings, they can be broken. And I want to prove to her that they can be. So it's funny because a situation that could have been seen as something that would hold me back is actually what is inspiring me to move faster and stronger and more badassier than ever.
That does seem to be your theme.
Yeah.
I think your risk that might not work out, we're going to wait and see how things go with the Uber situation.
Great, now put that on me. No, this don't work out just fine. No, but honestly, I feel like, again, back to the point I made earlier about sort of making moves that people always, it's like one job to another and people are like, oh, I don't know if that's so right. I always find that so interesting that, people on the outside want to advise on what you probably know on the inside. I have never made a move that I didn't inherently feel was right in my gut. I think we often make missteps when we don't do that. And I feel good. I feel good about this. So I'm moving.
All right.
Yeah. Literally and figuratively.
Gwynne.
So a risk that paid off. In June 2015, we blew up a Dragon spaceship in a really gut-wrenching launch failure. And our return to flight was 6 months later. It was in December of 2015. And that was a risky move. Not just because, I mean, we had to fly again, right? If we're a launch company, we got to launch. But the vehicle that we flew on that return to flight was a brand new, freshly spun vehicle design with the capability for the first time in history to be able to actually land the rocket. So coming off a failure, you want to try to do a safe thing. Yeah, we did not do the safe thing. Brand new rocket with satellites on top. We did not put a test vehicle on top. So we launched. We were grinning, gutting. Our gut was all torn up. And so we launched. We put 11 satellites into orbit, and we landed a rocket for the first time in history. So that was a bold move. I mean, everyone thought we were nuts, although, I think everybody thinks we're nuts almost all the time. And it paid off. It was great. A risk that didn't pay off, I'm not a regretter. I think when you make mistakes, you learn from them. So I'll take another professional risk. We started the company building a little rocket called Falcon 1. And it just was not earning its place on the production floor, but we did have customers for it. So we decided to cancel that program with customers. And what we were going to do is basically move those little satellites from the little rocket Falcon 1 onto the bigger Falcon 9 rocket. And it was a risk because, you have customers that bought this rocket, and we said, okay, we're going to cancel this program. We'll fly you, but it did take time to fly them. And the Air Force was angry with us for canceling because they were one of the customers on that rocket. And it took us 5 years, actually, to overcome that, that negative from canceling that program. It was, in the end, the right thing to do, but it was a big risk, and it took us some time to recover.
Yeah. Elaine.
Risk that paid off. I feel like there isn't a day that goes by that we aren't taking risks, honestly. But I think, just changing the direction of Teen Vogue it was a big risk, and especially at a time when magazines in general are challenged. It was sort of like this could be the end of Teen Vogue, or this could be the beginning of Teen Vogue. Second.
There had been that whole
life.
spate of teen magazines that there was the rise of teen people, teen this, teen that, and then they all kind of folded. And
all of them.
Yeah.
We were the last one standing next to 17.
Yep.
But it's worked. I mean, the last 2 years, we've seen the website grow from 2 million to 12 million. And our team has grown since I've been there from one person to a team of over 25 people. And that's not to the demise of the magazine subscriptions. We are up actually over 500% in our subscriptions. And that is directly tied to our success online. The political coverage that really spiked because of a piece that probably many of you read in December called "Trump is Gaslighting America." That was the singular, best-selling, or not best, most read story in the history of Teen Vogue. And because of that, we kind of captured a whole new audience that we weren't even targeting. And people saw Teen Vogue sort of in line with ACLU, Planned Parenthood. We have to keep Teen Vogue alive. And people really invested in us. And in December alone, we sold more magazine subscriptions in that month than we had in the whole year. And that trend has only continued through this year. So it's clearly working. I will say though that, in order to take a brand that was once seen as the go-to for young, stylish girls to what it is today requires a lot of risk, and especially because you're just not considered credible or an authority or trustworthy by an audience who's not used to you talking to them about some of the things that we started delving into. So one example of where that backfired was early on. Before becoming the editor-in-chief, I was the beauty and health director. And I learned in the headlines that I was the first Black beauty director in the history of Condé Nast. Which didn't know when I accepted the job, didn't know that was part of, that was gonna be the headline, but I realized the huge responsibility that came with that, being first, and the conversations that only I could bring to the table, the stories that only I could tell. And so, you sort of play by the rules for a while to establish yourself. And then, you know, by year 3, I was like, no, I'm ready to push it. Let's push the conversation, let's push the boundaries. And so I remember writing a story about, I got my hair done similarly to Bo's. You look like a queen.
Like this?
Yes, yes. Model them for me. But I got my hair done in Rwanda, got a Senegalese twist. And I wanted to write a story about that, about, you know, being someone who is in a position of authority in the fashion industry, which is predominantly white, and coming back into this bubble with my hair like that, and sort of the reactions that I receive from people, and how you know, sometimes beauty and your beauty choices can be activism in and of itself. Breaking the model for what leadership looks like is activism in and of itself. Having the bravery to do that, that takes courage. So I wanted to write a story about that, especially as a biracial woman exploring this other Afrocentric part of my heritage, and so it was a really like layered beauty story, and I remember casting a girl who was also biracial, but thought that was an important part of the story, and you know, I felt really proud of this, and then it went live, and then someone took a picture of the girl and posted it on Twitter, and because of the flash, the woman looked white. And then someone with like 100 followers on Twitter posted, "Teen Vogue commits cultural appropriation once again." That went viral.
Of course.
And then the Daily Mail posted, "Teen Vogue writes anti-black story." And once the Daily Mail gets a hold of you, like, good luck. And Black Twitter, good luck. You know, even
forget about it.
That's sort of an example that just no one read the story.
Right.
They saw this piece. It was taken out of context. Teen Vogue was at the time, you know, one of many magazines that commit cultural appropriation regularly. So why not point the finger? And I remember being told from my communications department, "Don't respond, let it die out." And I thought, I can't do that. This is a community that I'm representing at the table every day. I can't allow this to continue and to spiral without my voice. So I took a risk, and I wrote an open letter to all of the people who may have seen this and gotten it taken out of context, and that turned the narrative completely. And it could have. First of all, no one could have read it, or it could have been again attacked. But people read it, and then the Daily Mail wrote another piece, and they were like, "Teen Vogue Black editor responds," and you know, encourage people to actually read the story. And I feel like for me personally, as an editor of color, that was a turning point for me, where it was like the community that I'm standing for in my work actually recognizes that that's where I'm coming from, and then they can get behind me. And so it was a big move for Teen Vogue in establishing trust and credibility in this space that we hadn't had before.
By the way, can I say also that I'm a subscriber to Teen Vogue? I don't know if you know that. Yeah, you probably don't know that. I subscribe. But not because I'm a teen, but because my 8-year-old, because I support you. You know, because I support this message in this moment. And I think it's really important, PSA, to everybody who's interested. I think you should go subscribe.
That's great.
It's like, buy one for yourself, buy one for your niece, buy one for, your nephew. You know what I'm saying? Everybody. Get a subscription.
Well, and to continue the Love Fest a little bit, one thing that I would really want to underline about what you said is the importance of taking a risk every day. Particularly for women, we are not going to get credit for kind of doing the status quo. And so if you're not uncomfortable in taking some sort of risk, and it doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be showy, and it can't be necessarily about you and you alone, but if you're not taking a risk every day, every week, you're in trouble. Because the most tragic thing I see are women that are getting sort of minimized and marginalized around the sides because they're not willing to kind of push forward. So, and if you have kids, like one of the things I do with my son is every week we sit down and we say, tell me about a time that you had risk and felt uncomfortable this week. And it's good for him because it's good for him to challenge it, but it's really good for me because I have to, particularly, there's not that many times where you feel so unsure, but really making sure you're on the cutting edge of that all the time is what keeps us sharp and maximizing our impact.
Yeah, that's amen to that. It's interesting. We all work in kind of small C conservative industries, publishing, transportation, your new industry, consulting, accounting, and you wouldn't think that aerospace is a conservative industry, but it actually is. I think of it as being sort of super cutting edge and technological. And like, what did you find when you went into this industry and why disrupt there? It seems like a place that would always be disrupting.
So I spent about 15 years in a much more traditional role in the aerospace industry. And when I joined SpaceX, I said to myself, this is my last job in this industry. If SpaceX can't kind of spice things up and move things along much quicker, then I'd rather, be a barista or sell real estate or, do anything other than be in a constipated industry. And if you think about it, like we were at the moon 50 years ago, and we're not at the moon now. So we were doing great things with very little technology compared to today. And we're not doing those things now. I'm not saying we're not doing some great things in space. We are for sure. But if you think about, all the people that are working in this industry, you'd think that there was a lot more new things going on. Mm-hmm. But it is a very traditional industry, especially when there's human lives at stake with astronauts or customers that pay, anywhere from $100 million, $50 million to $500 million for a launch. They don't want you taking risk on that mission. So it is kind of hard to. So the risk taking comes from setting really audacious goals, like near impossible goals, and then breaking that process up into easily achievable milestones, right? So the end game is what seems impossible and where you're really taking the risk. But then the day-to-day pieces, at least in my industry, you can't. You don't want to blow up a rocket. It makes for tough finances, it makes for a really bad day, and super unhappy customers and employees. So
you've had to come back from situations like that twice.
That's correct, yes.
One thing that makes taking risks easier and makes disruption easier is having good mentors and people who support you. Elaine, are there people who've helped kind of build you into a risk taker? And are you doing that for others? How are you paying it forward?
100% wouldn't be on this panel, wouldn't be in New York if it wasn't for women who have opened the door for me. And I just know that. Like, I would still be somewhere trying to figure it out. I come from a really small town. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. Like, it really took someone to take a chance on me. And I don't take that for granted. I have mentees of my own, and I think it's my responsibility, to just open the door for someone else. And, to your point earlier, the whole purpose of this is we're talking about disruption. And I think, in order to get to that disruptive idea, you have to disrupt who's at the table and like where those ideas are coming from. And I've been able to do that at Teen Vogue. I mentioned I was the only person of color or Black person on our team just a few years ago. And now our team is made up of a really diverse group of folks, male and female, gay and straight, Black and white and other. And we learn from each other. And that learning is translated into the work that you're seeing. So it's really, our digital director is he just turned 26, and he's the guy that led the charge on going from 2 to 12. And he started as my assistant when I was a beauty director, and we've grown together. So I think it's so important. And then I have to shout out Boz, because just like she just did up here, she just shouted out Teen Vogue just to be a supportive sister. I consider you like a big sister, really, and a mentor for sure. She is someone who practices what she preaches, and I have a specific example of her doing that as it relates to a business and helping push our business forward at Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue was on Apple's do not buy list. Apple Music was like not taking phone calls from Teen Vogue. We were irrelevant, we weren't really their market. I came to Boz with an idea, and she immediately said, she validated that idea and said that, not only did she validate it, she jumped up, ran around the room, was like, that is brilliant, and I want to get behind it. Can I buy a page? I'm not an ad sales person, okay? Like, and also, you can talk to our ad sales people. It takes a lot to get a page from folks these days. And Bose asked for a page and came in to support us in that way. And then it grew into a larger partnership that is actually on newsstands now, our music issue, when Bose was at Apple Music. Last week,
I was there last
seconds ago. But it really speaks to this idea of like, what happens when you disrupt the formula of, or disrupt, the image of what a leader looks like. Like, she's a boss. And also, I'm a boss. And when we come together, we can make magic. We make magic happen, and we broke down the silos. Like, usually it would be the ad sales team in that meeting talking to your ad sales team, or it was just you and I picking up a phone, making something happen that actually pushed both of our businesses forward. And I thank you for that.
Man, there's so much love. Thank you.
I'm coming for you.
And I'm like, love over here, a little bit of over here.
I mean, it's interesting because we've heard Bose talk about, older female colleagues saying, hey, maybe you should slow down, not have a baby. You're talking about women helping each other. Has there been a sea change in the way that that women relate and work with each other in the workplace? I mean, this notion that, a generation ago, there was this sense that there was competition, or that, you were sort of warning each other about pitfalls rather than like able to be in positions of power to lift each other up. And it strikes me that there has been this kind of shift where as women rise into top positions, we really are able to move things rather than just kind of warn each other about, oh, watch out for that guy, he's creepy. So have you noticed that in your work, in your life?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a difference. I mean, if you look back, I would always joke, 25 years ago when there was only one woman, of course the women were fighting the women because it was for that one spot, right? I do think that a lot of well-intentioned women give very bad advice. I actually think that whether it's the younger voice or female, or diverse, or just name the category, I think there's a greater appreciation that we may want the end games, but there are a lot of ways to get there and things that different people want. So the notion of sort of there's a right answer, or there's a one way to get up the organization, or there's one job that's perfect for you, that notion, in my opinion, has been very diffused. And so people are giving better advice because they understand that there are a lot of personal choices and a lot of ways to get to where you want to go.
It just seems to me like it's easier to be an activist right now. That, I don't know whether it's social media, which I'm not a great user of, but it just feels like people seem to care more about each other and care more about the planet in general, maybe not in some specific areas. And so maybe that's what we're feeling. It's okay to support your sisters. We should be thinking about the planet. We should be protecting this world for our children. I don't know, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's each of our responsibilities. I get asked the question often, especially having been in tech now, the past few years, which is that, what do you think about diversity of women in tech? And, shouldn't we make, the leadership make changes? And it always is confusing to me, because I'm like, but why am I waiting for Tim Cook to make an announcement about what diversity means to me? Why am I waiting for anyone to do that? Like, why am I not doing that? And especially when I'm in a position to hire, when I'm in a position to buy a page, when I'm in a position to do anything. And by the way, I've been in that position for some time. It's like I became a manager a long time ago. Maybe not in the C-suite, but a manager at some point, which was able to make decisions on interns, make decisions on junior people who were joining the companies I worked for. So I really think it's our responsibility to do that. And by the way, I don't hide the fact that yes, I'm looking at women, and I'm looking at women of color. I'm like, okay, come on. Hold my hand, let's go. And how do you do that? So each of us are responsible for that. I don't want us to just look at leadership and say, why aren't those changes being made? If you have the opportunity to hire someone, do it.
Yeah. Elaine, how have you thought about this problem? Filling out it's not even a problem, it's a privilege, it's an opportunity. What's the main thing you look for when you're hiring?
what is the main thing that I look for? It's really, and I hate to say this, it sounds a bit generic, but passion. Because that's the thing you can't teach someone. And I think when you look at our team, who is, again, very, very diverse group of young people, the thing that we all have in common is how much we care about the work we do. And I don't, frankly, think you can survive today at Teen Vogue or at any other, publication if you aren't willing to go above and beyond and wear 10 different hats and sort of be a jack of all trades. And I need that from everyone, that commitment up front from everyone, that they're all in on this. And as a result, we become sort of like a little family, and we take care of each other. And I consider everyone on my team someone that, is a mentee, but also I learn from them. I listen to them. Like we're connected. And I think that's unique. I think that's really unique to find and to cultivate in an organization.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a great conversation. What a fantastic group of disruptors.
Thank you.